Lately, one of the major concerns that has plagued the gaming community since Ubisoft Massive announced that they were going to be taking on a Star Wars game is how is this game going to be delivered? There's a shared concern from Star Wars fans and also fans that are playing some of these Ubisoft games being developed by the studio in question. And one of the big issues has been, is there going to be enough time? Is there going to be enough expertise? Or are we going to be getting a quality of a game if we actually blend the current projects that Massive is working on and also the future project of a Star Wars game? In this video, my goal is to try to actually ease some of those tensions in order for us to see that there's enough room and there's enough space to be able to work on all of these projects. And we're going to look at things from a business perspective. So if you're new here, this is the Gaming Daddy channel. I cover Tom Clancy's The Division 2 and The Division, which is a game being made by Ubisoft Massive, but you're most likely here for a Star Wars video. And I'm also a Star Wars fan, by the way, which in some weird and strange phenomenon, I now have some sort of a crossroads, which both games, good favorite franchises of mine, are going to be developed by the same studio or similar in that sense studios. So let's talk about this Star Wars game and let's see after this video and evaluate if Massive Ubisoft is capable of actually making this game based on the information and data that we have. So first of all, let's look at Ubisoft's business model. So Ubisoft is one of those studios that does have a huge amount of video games in their library. They're able to churn out these games at intense and immense quantities. And the reason they're able to do that actually stems from a lot of things. So one thing is they make a lot of sequels. So it's easy for them to be able to go back and be able to take existing fandom, existing assets, existing ideas, and put them together and deliver a new game. So you could call it repackaging, whatever it is you want to call it. I think it does work for them. I think there's no reason for them to do anything otherwise because, in my opinion, it's very efficient. It makes them and places them in a position where they can be very competitive in the gaming industry. Another thing, too, about this particular studio is, or publisher, if I would say, is they have a lot of studios across the world. Most of their studios are tasked with bringing out a lot of their AAA and big titled games. This is if you basically evaluate, say, Assassin's Creed, evaluate their Tom Clancy games, evaluate even their Far Cry games, you're going to see that these games are basically being developed by studios who do seem to have their heads on their shoulders and have had a lot of experience over the years. And then as those studios are developing those big games, their other studios across the world just basically provide support in different ways. In fact, I just recently made a video on Tom Clancy's The Division 2 and basically showed that that game had a total of about 7 studios that worked on it. So anywhere from 300 to 400 people across the world on a minimum level would have had their hands on The Division 2 at any given time. Even while the game was still somewhat in a very dry spell of content and Massive Ubisoft was working on major expansions for it, there was another team located somewhere in Europe that was actually making content for this particular game. So in the manner of the Star Wars game and how much development time will be for that game, I don't think that's going to be a problem. If anything, I think the big problem will be the experience across the Star Wars universe and how the writers will treat that Star Wars game. Now, notice that I skipped over mechanics, I skipped over graphics, I skipped over all those things regarding RPG elements. And the reason I did is because I think Ubisoft Massive has proven themselves in those areas. Yes, they have. Many will disagree, but The Division 2 is a unique game when it comes to RPG takes that no other game in the industry has actually explored what this development company, that's Massive Ubisoft, has been capable of doing. This is what I think will be their strong point if they're able to implement these things in their Star Wars game. When it also comes down to, say, graphics, fidelity, how the game runs, sure, I have to say, and I give this caveat, that The Division 2, which was basically their most recent game, did not meet the mark when it came to the PlayStation 4 version. Now, yes, this is partly their own responsibility and fault to have not optimized the game for the PS4, but with Cyberpunk 2077 showing some issues on PS4, I think think it also reveals that there's also a partial fault with the PlayStation 4 console as being an inferior piece of hardware. It's just what it is. I have mine sitting here. It's gathering dust. I still use it from time to time, but I think that's just the reality. The game came out in 2013, and the consoles didn't necessarily receive too much of a refresh, unlike the Xbox counterparts, where a lot of people were able to upgrade. And still, for some strange reason, I guess Microsoft has a way, or because of their operating system, or because of their existing hardware, they're able to take on games even better than the PlayStation 4 console was. But now with the PS5 console coming out, I don't think we will see too much of those issues, or rather we'd see any issue like that. I think we can say we're going to wait till February, where they're bringing out an unlocked version of the Division 2 for the PlayStation and the Xbox Series X, for us to be able to see what graphically they're capable of on the console. So removing these concerns, I think the story, I think the progression, the lore, and those Star Wars elements are where we might get a little bit of a hiccup. Because this is a team that, yes, they've worked on Tom Clancy games, but what their writers are capable of, we don't necessarily know, nor are we aware of, unless maybe we did an investigation, or we probably maybe looked into where the writers that did the Division have worked, or their past projects, and we can maybe gauge or judge the quality of what they're able to do. And then another thing too, which is I think an added layer with Star Wars games, is the way Lucasfilms actually does operate. I think they will most likely have some Lucasfilms advisors that will kind of be working with them in close contact, so that they basically do well and provide a narrative that is Star Wars based. You know, I think another misconception that may have cropped up is, you know, this is going to be put in the hands of Massive and everything is just going to be done by them. I don't think that's the case. I can cite an example with Jedi Fallen Order. In the making, there was a video that talked about kind of the development process of that game, and they actually had, I think, 2 people from Lucasfilms who worked as consultants for that game to ensure that that game followed very closely the Star Wars narrative. This is something that George Lucas does. In fact, I think even on The Mandalorian, he was on the set, basically in some cases kind of, you know, helping David Filoni to stay on track with some of the things. Even David Filoni himself said it in the making. They did this little, I would say, reflection, which is called a gallery, which is where all the directors of the Mandalorian series, they sat down together, and Dave Filoni himself said, you know, sometimes I interpret some things in the Star Wars universe, and when I ask George, it's not what he meant by it, and he sometimes will have to actually put me back in line. So this is a thing where if you're really worried about that story aspect, I think perhaps that's where you should be worried about, because how would the synergy flow from the advisors who are working, or who may potentially be working with Massive, to actually put a story out in place? So when we look at these concerns, we look at the authenticity of a Star Wars game, we'll look at development, we'll look at potentially graphics, we'll look at delivery. I think we can actually scale down a lot of those other concerns and can probably focus more on how the game is going to be delivered, the authenticity, the story, and the different elements that will make it feel like a Star Wars game. But at the end of the day, you know, we still have to wait till the project is announced. They probably have to be very careful with their marketing, do some teasers to see how fans will respond, and most likely not give too many, details. In fact, I think they can actually go ahead and maybe show a little bit of a cutscene or a little bit of an action sequence, and maybe give a vague name, like I would say Project Lily or something like that. That way, people don't necessarily get a clue as to the name, and people can start interpolating, and the Star Wars community can start dissecting and talking about. This may grant them a little bit more direction. But I'll cut this video here. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think that after presenting and providing all of these, series of data and, analyses, that Ubisoft Massive is still capable of taking on this Star Wars game? I believe so, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys so much. If you enjoyed the content, you can subscribe, hit the like button, whatever it is you want to do, and hopefully we'll see in another video. Peace out.